Copper theft is on the rise in Los Angeles. You see streetlights that are out because of it. But this problem is a lot bigger. Our guest today is Chief of Detectives Alan Hamilton. He's here to tell us who are the victims, how much is the impact, and who is doing these crimes.
The absent-minded idiot that removes that copper without thinking of the ramifications down the road is literally draining the coffers of this city by creating an unnecessary expense of tens of thousands of dollars to replace one light standard and the infrastructure.
I'm Siamak Korami. Welcome to California Insider. Alan, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
In LA right now, there is a lot of copper theft. And as a result of it, infrastructure is breaking down. Can you tell us what's happening?
So we are seeing an upswing in both metal theft, copper, you're seeing some of your bronze taken off the street. You're seeing some other metals taken. And we are seeing that around the Southern California region because we have crooked recyclers that are taking that material in and providing cash to the people that are stealing those items. There is actually a well-defined culture of people that go around Southern California, and they know where these opportunities are for them to steal large amounts of copper. They know that when they see refrigerant devices, when they see air conditioning units, when they see some of these large industrial units that have large amounts of copper in them, they know that they can strip those out quickly, the bulk of the copper out quickly, and take that to a crooked recycler and get cash for those items. And it runs the gamut. It's not, I know a lot of times people think it's the drug addict that lives down the street or something like that. There are people that make a lot of money in this industry by stealing these items and then taking them to crooked retailers or recyclers who are going to give them, pennies on the dollar, obviously, but they're going to have large, bulky amounts of copper and other precious metals, and they're going to trade that and give the cash, and they're not going to follow the statutory requirement to record the person's identification and to record the transaction.
What kind of things are they stealing?
You're going to see a lot of air conditioning units being struck, industrial. When I say this, I mean industrial size, not necessarily your typical residential with the copper coils, but you're going to see a lot of industrial grade stuff. You're going to see a lot of government infrastructure affected. You'll see cable infrastructure affected. AT&T is one of our largest victims here in the Los Angeles region, where not only have they had attacks on their vaults, on their aerial lines, and other places like that, they've literally had spool copper stolen from some of their yards in the San Fernando Valley. So those kinds of things present a massive cost to those companies. There are organizations and there are also some business organizations that have united to fight this scourge. And of course, the largest victim that we see here in the Southern California region is government. The state of California is quite often the number one victim because all of their right-of-ways, a lot of the other things that they have in are copper infrastructure. And these thieves know that they can have access to large amounts of copper infrastructure because they've been doing this sometimes for years and even a couple of decades.
What are the government things they're taking?
So there will be some vaulted access points along the government right-of-way. So just for instance, for Caltrans in the state of California, there are conduits that run along a lot of the state highways. And when I say state highways, I don't necessarily always mean freeways. It could be something like Pacific Coast Highway. Yeah, it could be Pacific Coast Highway, Santa Monica Boulevard. There are a number of other state highways where there's state infrastructure that runs along those paths. And these thieves, unfortunately, know how to gain access to those areas by committing an act of vandalism, accessing those areas, and then stripping out the copper wire. So that's just one example. Here in the city of Los Angeles, for example, in some of the other municipalities surrounding Los Angeles, you have copper infrastructure and metal infrastructure that is used for the lighting system. So quite often when you see lighting systems go down, that is why. There's access at the base of the pole sometimes, and if you know what you're doing, you can actually strip out the copper wire that's underground and in the pole at the same time.
So how much money is there to be made from the state infrastructure? Is that cable? Is that electricity wires?
It's actually a combination. So some of the items that are taken are going to be infrastructure that's required to maintain the freeway. So you see the overhead lights, you see the lighting for the freeway signs, you see a lot of other things. And then in addition to that, a lot of the right-of-way is used to move along some municipalities' power supply. So the people that know and are involved and engaged in this theft know where the large amounts of copper are going to be found. They know how to access some of these vaults because they've done them before. And quite often we see the same individuals who have been arrested, prosecuted, maybe even spent some time in either jail or prison, and then they come out and then they know how to access those things again. And if they fall back into that life of crime, they're going to fall back into that same pattern of activity, and they're going to attack they're going to access those same rights away, and they're also going to, unfortunately, access the same conduit. And you'll see repeated acts of vandalism, and you'll see repeated acts of theft as well.
How much money do they make when they break into one of these?
So it's pennies on the dollar. They're not going to make a whole lot of money on these thefts. But here's the thing. A crooked recycler can take those items in and make considerably more than they're going to pay out the person that brings it in on what we identify as kind of like the black market. So that probably going to be something like 10 cents on the dollar. And then that crooked recycler is going to turn around and probably do it for 25 cents on the dollar, depending on what the spot market is. Like right now, because of the current tariff situation and everything else that's going on, there are some situations where the price of copper has gone down recently. So it had gone up for a while, and now it's going down a little bit. The market's reactive, and the theft market is reactive.
So the theft goes up and down because the price goes up and down?
When you see copper and other precious metals going up in value, probably the best example is when the spot market of precious metals for catalytic converter metals goes up. You're going to see an increase in catalytic converter theft throughout communities, because you're going to be able to get more money from a crooked recycler who's going to ship those things overseas anyway to mine out the precious metals from inside of a stolen catalytic converter.
How much damage does this cause when they break in and take these cables out?
So that's the other massive problem that we're having. In order to access and steal not only copper, but certainly when we're talking about brass fixtures that you've seen recently stolen from the city of Pasadena and the Carson area, you talk about monument markers, grave markers, some of this stuff can't be replaced. I mean, some of this stuff is historical, they're cultural artifacts, they're memorial plaques for cities, some of them are dedicated to our veterans, some of them are dedicated to people that have passed away, family members. A lot of these items they're irreplaceable. So a lot of them have a high metal content, and so you're looking at two costs. You're looking at a cost of the loss to the community, but you're also looking at a monetary cost to get those things either redone or to get them recovered. So for instance, a high value light standard that is a monument for, let's say, Old Town Pasadena. It's going to be very expensive to replace a stolen lamp standard that is all bronze. Very expensive. Those artifacts, brass, bronze, copper, those things are very, very expensive to replace at today's market rates. So now I remind people all the time, when those things are stolen from a municipality, those are taxpayer dollars that are going to be used to replace, repair, or unfortunately, from a cultural aspect, you're now going to be in a situation where that dedicated plaque, memorial, et cetera, is no longer a part of the community. So there are many different costs. Now, the other cost is the infrastructure. Quite often, there's a lot of damage done. There's a lot of vandalism done when people access these areas to steal metals. For instance, if you're stealing, let's just say you're stealing something from an AT&T underground vault. Okay, you've damaged the vault. You've probably damaged the board where all of the copper wires are strung and they're unified. And you've also caused damage to the electrical infrastructure. All that has to be repaired after you replace the copper that was stolen. One of the biggest problems we're seeing right now in the industry and with the trade organization that Charter runs is we're seeing a lot of people thinking they're stealing copper, but they're also taking fiber optic cable and severing it and removing it. That is extremely dangerous to some of our communities, because that, for some of our seniors, for some of our disabled folks, that is their only lifeline. And we see that infrastructure removed. AT&T now has to get a crew out there, often in off hours, to get that repaired immediately, because we cannot allow lifeline service to go unaddressed. And then that company, whether it's AT&T, Spectrum, Charter, whoever, that company has to pay additional wages. They have to get additional material. They have to repair what's there, and then they have to test it and make sure that it's ready to be brought back up to the appropriate service level. All of those are expenses that are going to be passed along to the consumer. When it is something that is within the government, whether it's local, county, state, or federal, your tax dollars are going to go to repairing that infrastructure, replacing that stolen metal, and then getting those systems back online. And it is a very expensive proposition.
Thank you for watching California Insider on YouTube. If you like our content, make sure to press the like button and comment so that the algorithm can reach more people. If you're not a subscriber yet, make sure to subscribe to our channel so that we can update you with the trends and issues that are going on in California. Now let's go back to the interview. When people take that cable, how much money do they make?
Let's just say there's an industrial unit on top of a building, on top of a warehouse somewhere. And they're going to strip the copper wire out of that. So that unit is now, it's damaged beyond repair. No one's going to replace the unit. That's probably, if it's an industrial refrigerant or cooling unit or something like that, you're looking at $20,000. So now you have to get that replaced. So you have to pay the money to get that taken back off of your roof with a crane and then placed on the ground, have the new unit put in, installed, brought up to spec, and then turned back on. All because someone climbed on a roof and removed copper where they're probably going to get maybe $50 to $75 on that recycling at a crooked recycler. That crooked recycler will turn it around and get maybe $200 to $300 on that scrap copper. What they will identify as scrap copper, which in fact is not scrap copper, which in fact is copper that was removed from an industrial cooling unit that is very expensive at today's prices.
So $30,000, $40,000 of damages for $75 that somebody makes.
Sure, I'll give you another example. Bureau of Street Lighting here in the city of Los Angeles. Someone gets a kick panel, they remove the kick panel, and they strip out the wire to that pole, and now that pole is dark, and the wire has been stripped out. So now you need to get a Bureau of Street Lighting crew to come out, ensure that they're meeting all of the Cal OSHA safety standards, so they've got to bring a lot of equipment out, they've got to bring a bucket truck out, they've got to test the light standard to see if it still operates. Did the light get damaged when the wire was removed? We don't know, so we've got to test all of that. Then they've got to bring out additional copper at market prices, whatever the spot market is for the copper at that time. If they have to purchase it from a vendor, then they have to actually put it in. So now you need a whole crew to replace that one along with all the other ones that were damaged if there were other thefts in other nearby lampposts. That's an expensive proposition. You're talking about getting a crew out there, examining it, determining what needs to be repaired and what's gone, fixing the infrastructure that was damaged to remove the copper. Hopefully there's no underground damage. If there's underground damage, that's a different crew from Public Works that has to come out and evaluate how they're going to now replace that stripped out copper wire. So these are not things where someone just shows up with a spool of copper wire, feeds it into the conduit, and we're done. It doesn't work that way. There are a lot of different city regulations and safety regulations that have to be met in order for us to make these repairs. And they're in place for the right reason. We don't want people being electrocuted, being injured on the job. We don't want those things to happen to our city employees, our city family. So we have to take those precautions. The absent-minded idiot that removes that copper without thinking of the ramifications down the road is literally draining the coffers of this city by creating an unnecessary expense of tens of thousands of dollars to replace one light standard and the infrastructure.
And do they come back? There's reports that when these things get fixed, or sometimes the city gives up because if you fix them, there will be another one that will come back and take the copper out.
I wouldn't go as far as to say the city giving up. So the city has a routine inspection of all of our infrastructure. Now, admittedly, there's a backlog, but there's a real danger to streets being darkened. We rely on street lighting, number one, for community safety, not only for crime prevention reasons, but we don't want darkened streets because the city has paid hundreds of millions of dollars to ensure that when they put in a light standard, that it is illuminating an area for traffic safety, for community safety, for the benefit of the tax-paying public. And we have entered into an agreement that we're going to keep those lit for the city. So when, let's just say an area is affected, let's just say the same thief keeps hitting different light standards in different areas and taking the ripping it out and affecting it. And it's not on the solar grid because some of our lights are solar. So let's say that's the case. The expense from that to make the community whole and to get those things back online is expensive, because we have to do it by our city policies and our city guidelines in terms of safety and all the other stuff. So we're going to repair those, and we're going to honor our commitment to provide lighting to the city. That's a core function of the government, is to provide safety. And that is a device for safety. Like this week, we'll see National Night Out celebrated nationwide. And here in LA, you'll see a lot of events. Well, as part of our contract for National Night Out, we go out and we talk to communities. We talk to neighbors. We ask them what's going to make them feel safe. One of the top requests is lighting in the community, because not all the streets are lit in the city of Los Angeles. So when we put that infrastructure in, those devices, there's an expectation, and a legitimate expectation from the community, that the city is going to maintain them. When an individual commits an act of either vandalism and theft, that is an additional cost that the city has to bear. And again, I remind everyone, that is their tax dollars at work.
What about, you mentioned they go to these crooked copper dealers. Have you guys gone after them?
So recently, I'll just say in the last couple of years, and I will tell you that former council member Paul Krikorian was one of the pioneers of this, because in Council District 2, he was seeing a lot of metal theft. We did some investigation for him, and we found that there were not necessarily crooked recyclers in his district, but there were crooked recyclers nearby. Some of them in the city, some of them in the county. So our city attorney, Heidi Feldstein Soto, put together a task force, and they addressed directly these crooked recyclers that we know were crooked. We knew that, you've got huge amounts of copper that you're turning into a wholesale recycler, but then you've got no paperwork vetting who turned it in. So that's against the law. So the city attorney started putting pressure on some of these crooked recyclers, and we did see some results. And I will tell you that we regularly monitor who is turning in things to lawful recyclers, and we see quite often the same names popping up. Our ask is that they feed them into the system so that we know who's making those transactions, so we know who to put our scarce law enforcement resources on, because they're now active back in the metal theft community and they're out stealing again. So that is one of the ways, if our recyclers do the job they're supposed to do and they follow the guidelines in the law as they're supposed to follow it, we would know who is turning in those metals that can be traced back to, let's say, AT&T, let's say back to the city of Los Angeles. We would now know who is turning those items in, and we would be able to build a case and go out and arrest them.
Is it easy to tell that this is coming from a public infrastructure, this type of cable?
So I'm not going to reveal our methods to the public. It's often very, very easy to tell. Sometimes it's very obvious. We tell our recyclers when we have meetings with them, or when we provide a warning to them, and when we cite them, we tell them, it was marked City of Los Angeles. Did you think maybe you should have called the local police station, or the number that is provided to them to call our detectives at Commercial Crimes Division so that we could conduct an investigation, and that maybe you shouldn't have taken that in? Again, we're not putting all of the onus on the retailer. What we're asking the retail recyclers to do is be good stewards of the community, especially of the community trust.
Before we move to the rest of the interview, I wanted to show you some headlines that our newspaper Epoch Times has covered this week. One of the developments that's happening in the fire areas, people were splitting lots using SB 9 law, turning these single-family home lots to multiple, and were planning to build. But the LA City and Governor Newsom decided to change the rules. So people are not allowed to do that anymore. And also Governor Newsom has changed the mandate for low-income housing in these areas. So developers don't have to worry about the low-income housing mandates. There's some positive news that the homeless count in LA has gone down. The unsheltered homeless count in LA has gone down by 9.5% this year. UC schools are admitting more Californians, except the elite ones. The UCLA and UC Berkeley are admitting less Californians. One more important story, California is making it harsher for adults to buy sex from teens that are under 16. Governor Newsom just signed it into law. If you haven't subscribed to our newspaper Epoch Times, Make sure to subscribe to it because there are so many other sections. There's so many interesting national, international stories and stories about China that nobody is covering. We'll leave you a link below. You can check it out. Now let's go back to the interview. Now, there was an outage. Charter Communications had 50,000 customers down because of a theft case, and they are trying to portray this as domestic terrorism. What are your thoughts on this?
So here's the thing. I'm not going to address that specific investigation because it is still under investigation, but it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. So let's just say that you have a interwoven fiber optic strand that's also co-located with a copper strand. How do you know? I mean, you know that there's damage. You know that the service is down. Now, I would say this, and again, I'm not addressing any specific investigations, but I would say if the fiber optic was the object of the attack independent of copper, then we probably have a serious problem. You know, I want the public to understand fiber optic cables, they're the lifeline of some communities. You have people that rely on that access literally for their life. They may be seniors, they may be disabled, there may be any number of reasons. And it's important that we maintain that critical infrastructure. So if I were to put on my terrorist hat and I'm thinking, how can I sow discord in a community? Certainly the public communications infrastructure would be one of my first targets. I mean, that goes without saying. So we have to conduct an investigation to make a determination as to whether that was something that was destroyed or damaged because of a copper theft or a metal theft, or whether it was deliberate and intentional sabotage for public infrastructure to further other means. I know there is certainly concern with Charter because, again, imagine the cost that they've had to take on with infrastructure to 50,000 customers in a residential community. It's massive. It's a massive unanticipated cost to their infrastructure. And then there's always that question of, you know, what is the repair going to take? Is it a simple repair where we just restrand it and then we light it back up and connect it? Or is there more intentional damage to a vault, to the infrastructure part of it, to a switch? You know, when those things happen, it could easily go into the millions of dollars. You start talking about damaged switches, damaged boxes, damaged infrastructure. It could potentially take a long time to repair depending on what was damaged and the access point to repair the damage. Sometimes, like I was discussing earlier, it's aerial, sometimes it's underground. It just kind of all depends. But there's an expense for, none of them are free. So I want to be clear about that. None of these will be repaired for free. There will always be a cost. And unfortunately, in that specific example, that cost again is going to be passed on to consumers in the way of rate hikes. So there's never a free ride in repairing any of this stuff and reprovisioning it. There's always going to be a cost to it. Again, city government, city taxes. That's how those repairs are going to be paid.
Are you worried about where this is going, or do you think this is at the rate that it is, it's not that scary for the community?
So with the reduction in our resources in terms of our number of sworn members here and civilians as well, with that reduction, we're going to be asked to handle more cases with fewer resources. So just for instance, we recently had funding from a former council member when they were in their council office to address metal theft directly. As you can probably imagine, there was no shortage of work when those funds were provided, and we utilized those funds quickly. But we did get some quality arrests. We did a lot of quality investigations, and we helped out our business partners here in Los Angeles, as well as the state of California. But that funding has now run out. So now it's a matter of how are we going to fund that specific effort into the new fiscal year, and that funding has not been produced yet in the city of Los Angeles. When you talk about the amount of money that you can save by removing someone who is constantly vandalizing and stealing public infrastructure, let's just say we got the top 5 most active individuals that were doing it. That would probably save both the city governments and the county and local governments and the state of California government and some of our partners, AT&T, again, Charter, Spectrum, et cetera. It would probably save them tens of millions of dollars in repair, replacement, and provisioning of damaged infrastructure. Just the top 5.
And when you get these guys, what happens to them? Do they get put away for many years?
Over the past few years, there has not been any specific effort to address those thefts, I will say that under our current district attorney, that we have had successful felony filings on repeat offenders who are addressing the infrastructure on both the government and the private business side. We have had successful prosecutions. We have several that are going through right now where they were charged basically, they were charged with multiple counts because we were able to prove that there were multiple instances. And they are probably facing actual prison, whereas in the previous years, we were not seeing prison terms being given to a lot of these individuals. What we were seeing are low plea terms, mostly on the misdemeanor level, and probation with no jail time whatsoever. Just to be clear, here in Los Angeles County, those days are over. DA Hochman has been crystal clear that he is not going to allow these massive hits to the infrastructure here in the government. And he has assigned an environmental crimes district attorney and an organized crimes district attorney who have been very helpful in this effort to address certainly the recidivist ones, but the high dollar losses as well for the suspects that we arrest.
You mentioned funding for LAPD, and you guys are already short-staffed, right? Can you tell us about that?
I can tell you historically, we actually used to have a unit within our commercial crimes division that specifically addressed just metal theft. We used to have 5 detectives that addressed just metal theft in the city of Los Angeles, and it was a full-time job because there was a period where during the height of the catalytic converter theft craze and the copper theft craze, and then you started seeing a lot of other infrastructure being stolen, we had detectives that worked that unit specifically for that purpose. So that 5 is now 0. We do not have anyone that's working metal theft on a dedicated capacity. Fortunately, our Operations Central Bureau team under Lieutenant Andy Mathis has been doing a phenomenal job addressing metal theft here in the Civic Core in downtown Los Angeles, in the area just south of here, which is really the area that is hit the hardest. So he and his team have been doing phenomenal work, working very closely with all of our governmental partners, working very closely with industry that is being affected by these thefts. And they have been doing a phenomenal job of identifying these individuals, conducting surveillance, arresting them, and bringing them to successful prosecution. And I will say this too, there's never an upfront, upfront to the public, you just see that someone was arrested and that they have pending felony charges. I think what we're going to see on the back end under DA Hochman is some of those deals that were cut in the past are not going to be deals that are going to be cut in the future. They've been consistent in making sure that, in particular, recidivist individuals who have done the jail term, the probation, and all the other stuff and agreed to not be engaged in the activity again are re-engaging in that activity again. They should rest assured that they are not going to get the breaks that they were getting before. There's going to be full bore forward prosecution, and I think a lot of people are going to end up in state prison where they should be, because again, when we start talking about the cost, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars per incident that is coming out of your tax money. These individuals need to pay a price and see the justice is served so that we can deter people from committing these acts in the future.
You said your team has gone from 5 to 0 on this issue.
Yes.
But you guys are having a shortage right now of staffing, right?
Yeah, so right now it's funding dependent. So if there are funds that are, like, let's say a council member takes some of their discretionary funds and they put it towards the effort for metal theft prevention and prosecution, then we have detectives that will work those cases on an overtime basis or as those funds become available. Unfortunately, because we're down around 8,670-ish sworn members, we have to be very careful about where we place those investigative resources. So for instance, there's been a decrease in some violent crimes in the city of Los Angeles, in particular homicide, because we've made a lot of investments in the past years in youth intervention, our community safety partnership, a lot of different areas where we knew it wasn't going to pay dividends until down the road. Well, we're starting to see some of those dividends paid with a lower homicide rate. We still have an issue with robbery in this city, and we still have victims being shot. We have to be very careful about where our resources are allocated. We have to be selective as far as where we assign individuals. So we have a commercial crimes division that addresses a lot of the commercial crimes that are occurring in the city of Los Angeles. And they have specialized skills for addressing those areas. And when they come to help in that area, when there's funding, they're very good at what they do. but it's not something that we can sustain on an ongoing basis when we also have violent crime issues to address, and then we also have to provide basic 911 service to 4 million people.
How many people do you guys need to have to be adequately staffed?
For a city like Los Angeles, we have bureaus within the city of Los Angeles. We have 4 different bureaus. So we have a West Bureau, a Central Bureau, a South Bureau, and a Valley Bureau. I think if we had one investigator coordinating all of those cases and then taking all of the serious cases per bureau, we could probably do it with 4 and a supervisor and address the city. But without having that resource always available, it's very difficult to do that. Of course, when you're taking those 4 away, the question becomes, where do you take those 4 away from? Do you take them from high-level robberies, follow-home robbery investigations? Do you take them from shooting investigations? Do you take them from gang investigations? So it's a hard choice. And the Chief McDonald, has a very difficult decision to make about where these resources are allocated. When it comes down to it, this is kind of seen 2 different ways. Yes, it is a property crime, but I'm going to go back to reminding folks that it's a property crime, but when infrastructure is damaged, you're talking about damage to communities where people are relying on communication services for their life. So it's important. We have a lot of different things that are important in this city, but we're comparing the metal theft issue to, let's say, the burglary issue that we're seeing here in the city of Los Angeles, where we've seen a decrease, but it is still an area of major concern. We have to have resources for those investigations, to do surveillance, to do undercover operations, to do investigations, to arrest folks. And then once we arrest them, we want to recover as much of the property of these victims as possible. So we do all of that within our infrastructure of roughly 8,600 police officers sworn and roughly 2,300 civilian professionals for a city of 4 million people.
Is that number going to go up anytime soon, the 8,600?
I think with this past budget, we're going to be challenged to see our numbers increase. I think right now with the current budget proposal and the one that was ratified by the mayor, we're going to see the numbers probably go down roughly 200 to 300. But the mayor and the city council is looking every day to find additional funding so that we can add towards the end of the fiscal year to those numbers and hopefully hire more police officers. So right now we are approved to hire 240 sworn members of the department in this coming fiscal year. Unfortunately, we're going to see 500 to 550 leave in retirements, resignations, people going to other agencies, other attrition. We're going to see that number probably outstrip the number of hires. So I know the mayor has committed, as has the city council, to looking for that funding throughout the year. I know our CAO is looking for those dollars as well to make sure that if there are dollars available, we can put those back towards police hiring. But it looks like as of right now, we're going to probably end up the fiscal year, right around 8,400 to maybe 8,350 when all is said and done.
You guys had some recruiting issues in the past. Is the public perception of police have become better in LA, where more people are joining?
It's kind of funny because we did see a decrease in people wanting to come on to the Los Angeles Police Department. In 2020, 2021, you had a lot of things going on with the pandemic. You had, you had George Floyd. You had a lot of different issues happening. I don't think there was ever a time when no one wanted to be a police officer. But I can tell you that right now, for instance, in January, 1,800 applications to the Los Angeles Police Department. So there's no shortage of individuals that want to wear this badge. However, we are certainly hiring right now. We are certainly looking for the best and the brightest to come on to Big Blue. But I'm going to say this. We have standards. And as the chief has been clear, and as the mayor has been clear, as has our police commission, we are not going to lower our standards in order to hire people. We're going to maintain that same standard, which is a tough standard. We only hire 4 or 5 people out of every 100 applicants. Of the 4 and 5 that we hire, only 3 or 4 will get through the academy, off probation, and become a full-fledged Los Angeles police officer. So there's an 18-month process after you get hired that you have to get through. Typically, we see that, weed out people that have decided that it's not going to be the best career choice for them. And, that's just kind of part of the process. But we are seeing large numbers of individuals that are interested in this career choice. And we encourage people all the time, go to unrivaled.com, go to join LAPD. We are certainly hiring. We are certainly looking for the best and the brightest. This is a great career field. We have over 250 different jobs on this department. We have a lot of cutting edge technology that I have not discussed that is going to make us a leader in law enforcement. We are in the process of bringing up our real-time crime center here in Los Angeles Police Department. We have now launched our drone program, Drones as a First Responder. We have a lot of exciting things on the horizon that are going to lead us to be much more effective and much more efficient with the resources that we do have. And we want to bring the next generation of leaders onto this department to lead that charge to make LA a safer place.
So you're the chief of the detectives.
Yes, I am the stop. So it comes up to me generally, investigations department wide. I have functional supervision over roughly 1,400 investigators at all different levels and different assignments in the department. I have a staff of roughly 900-ish that are handling investigations citywide directly for me and handle both of our crime labs. So both of the crime labs are under Detective Bureau, and we have divisions that specialize in gangs, narcotics, commercial crimes, juvenile investigations, our mental evaluation unit, which is the gold standard nationwide. We have our CompStat division, which closely tracks all of our statistics and provides inspections of all of our crime fighting processes to make sure that they're operating as they need to operate. And we have a threat management unit that is about to have their national conference that is the gold standard nationally and internationally for threat assessment professionals worldwide. We'll be bringing them here to Southern California to have our conference and talk about the latest techniques and tools that are available for threat assessment. As you've seen internationally, worldwide,
especially with China.
Well, the threat environment has increased greatly. We have both state and non-state actors that are posing a threat to the homeland, that are posing a threat to individuals, whether they be athletes, celebrities, governmental figures. We handle all of that in-house here at the LAPD with our federal partners. And quite often, some of those investigations are done at the highest level, and we do it with very limited resources in an extremely challenging environment, as you see here in the city of Los Angeles. So it's a tough job.
For those of us that don't know, what is it like to be in your shoes? Because you're seeing a lot of probably very interesting crimes. Can you tell us what are some of the highs and lows that you have seen being in this role?
As you can imagine, there are a lot of sensitive investigations that go on within the city of Los Angeles that touch different areas of the country. And again, like I said, we work very closely with our federal partners on a lot of investigations. Quite often you'll see things happening on the federal and the state level, and you'll think it's only at that level, but quite often the Los Angeles Police Department is attached.
You guys were involved with it.
Because we have an interest here in the city in maintaining the safety of the city. So, we've handled some of the most sensitive investigations seen internationally, whether it's OJ or whether it's something along those lines, the Hillside Strangler, all the way back to the Black Dahlia. I mean, there's an unlimited number of cases that I can bring up.
Was there one that made it worth it for you to be in this role?
Well, there's one specific to my role as an investigator, and I'll go over that momentarily. But I will tell you that our success does not rely on technology. It does not rely on luck. It does not rely on happenstance. What it relies on is the professionalism and the dedication of the men and women that work for this department. I can be replaced tomorrow. And one day when I retire, a few years from now, that name on that door will be replaced, and there will be another name on that door. And that's just a fact. What can't be replaced is the indomitable spirit, commitment, and dedication that our investigators in this department put forward for the city of Los Angeles. Quite often unheralded, unrecognized, and sometimes unrewarded. I'll give you one example. Our juvenile division detectives are the best in the world. Internet crimes against children, we work worldwide with all of our partners on individuals that are doing crimes against children on the internet. Worldwide, whether they're coming here to meet a juvenile or whether they're doing things online that are illegal. Oftentimes, things happening in the dark, in the background, saving our kids in this community Again, unheralded and unrecognized, but they do yeoman's work. Hundreds of arrests a year, hundreds, and successful prosecutions. That's just an example of what exists here that isn't necessarily always getting out. Now, for me, I can tell you that I was previously a homicide detective at one point in my career. I've worked a lot of investigations. I've taught technology and interview and interrogation as a primary instructor for the Los Angeles Police Department to literally thousands of detectives statewide and on the department. I handled a case back when I was a homicide detective. You may have heard of it, the silent movie theater case over in the Fairfax district. That was my case, along with my partner, John Miller. Phenomenal detective, great guy, great friend. You know, you get that call in the middle of the night, and you never know, with that phone or that pager, you had pagers back then, it was a long time ago, but you never know what's coming up. Is it going to be the big one or it's not going to be the big one? And that was the big one. It was the last operating silent movie theater in North America. A lot of cultural significance. That was one of my key cases that I handled in my homicide career. And we were able to resolve it successfully, arrest both perpetrators. Unfortunately, one of the victims sustained life-threatening injuries, but she has since recovered and gone on with her life. It was a very public case. It happened right around the time that Bill Cosby's son was murdered. And there were a lot of other things going on in Los Angeles and concern about crime. And I can say that moving forward, I continue to follow the individuals that were involved in that case, both the victims and the suspects. So, one of the duties of a homicide detective is to follow a case to the end, and that includes the prosecution of the individuals that perpetrated the crime. So I keep an eye on that as well. And I proudly wear my detective hat, as it were, throughout my career. And I will wear that hat beyond my assignment here. I will continue to follow those cases that I was involved in to make sure that our victims, who absolutely count the most, the victims absolutely count. We will ensure on this department that every single victim of a crime in this city gets their due respect, gets their due service, and gets their due commitment from my detectives. And that is a non-negotiable fact.
Chief Alan Hamilton with LAPD, it was great to have you on California Insider.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Let us know what you think of copper theft in LA. Do you have any suggestions how the city can solve this problem? You can always reach out to us at siamak@californiainsider.com or comment. We read all of your emails and comments. I'm Siamak Khorrami. This is California Insider. We'll see you next time.